Good morning. Off work late today, but that's okay because it's making that money. Today I want to talk about something that's been kind of crazy. Everybody sees the LS craze taking over, the 240s. They're in Toyota Crestas. They're in all kinds of crap. I would say at a local grid life event, you almost see as many Honda-powered K-swap things as you do other random LS swaps. Miatas, BMWs. There's I think a 2002 that I see running with one of those around. Just recently on the Hoonigans Build Battle Season 3, these guys are putting a K24 and a 350Z with the CD009 training. So Collins Adapters already makes transmission transmission swap kits, essentially bell housing kits, to do the CD009 in a freaking K series. That shit's crazy to me. Of course, Miata does them with the Getrag 250s, really the Getrag for the inline 6-cylinder beamers, and the ZFs for the inline 6-cylinder beamers. Direct bolt on to the K-swap. So I've just been recently watching. I guess the first time I saw a K-swapped S14 or S15 or whatever 240 Nissan Toke Factory kind of had theirs demoed out, but I guess old Speed Academy did one. I wouldn't exactly say they pioneered it. I don't have any idea, but they definitely had theirs running. I'm watching and going through their stuff right now, going through their channel, watching and kind of getting caught up to speed on those episodes. The whole K-series craze, it's not certainly not abnormal to Honda swaps to be popular, but Honda swaps to be going into other platforms like Miatas. You already saw Honda swaps in Mini Coopers. You see Honda swaps in the MRS Spiders. But the freaking today, I learned about kind of a little bit more about the Honda-Roo. That's the Subaru with the K24, K20 swap into it. Still running the Subaru all-wheel drive transmission setup. The case thing is getting out of control. So much to the fact that, and this is what really made me start thinking about it, or really kind of looking into it more. My buddy Kieran O'Callahan's got a 1UZ swapped S14, and he had big plans to, do ITBs for it. He's got big Kelford camps for it, all kinds of stuff. And he's contemplating selling all that stuff to go to a K-swap into one of those cars. And to me, it's crazy. Frank and I were talking about the other day. Motors at 400 horsepower, are they reliable enough for endurance racing? I think with a small turbo on a K-series, they're reliable at 400 horsepower for endurance racing. So why wouldn't you put that in any of these things? 400 horsepower in a Miata, 400 horsepower in a 240, and any of these weird platforms would be awesome. It's just crazy that these are front-wheel drive engines people are putting in all these random cars. It's just wild to me. I think it's pretty awesome. I'm a big Honda guy, B-Series, for me, but I definitely see a ton of advantages for the K-Series. That being said, there's not really any good, they're tall, there's really not any good oil pan situations yet that I've seen, fixes. And I'm just watching the beginning. I'm halfway through the K20 or the K24 swap Speed Academy car. But that car has got there's cops up ahead. I'm trying to be on my best behavior right now. Now there's 2 cops ahead. But anyway, so they cut the oil pan and clearance the subframe so that they could do to get this, thing to sit back down as low as it would and as far back as it would. And what's crazy to me is that they ended up cutting out 1.6 liters of the oil pan capacity. So they're going to do wings on the front of it. That's what Toke Factory did. And after the fact, of course. And I see that the wings thing, and their big deal is trying to get the engine as low as possible, but this is Toke Factory, but offer a kit that's basically anyone can buy it and bolt it on and put it together. They have their own pickup, they've got, their own pan, all these things that they're pretty much in, I think they're still in development. But the thing I was really suspicious on is they basically have a pan that's really wide in the front. And I guess that's technically how the stock Honda pan was, in a sense. You look at the stock K-Series pan, and the footprint on this thing is pretty big. And so you look at the footprint of these winged or whatever oil pans, and to me, I see a problem with oiling immediately in the cornering situation. And then to take that proof of concept as an example, look at the WRX, the older, say, Bug-Eye WRX pans versus the STI pans. The footprint on the STI pan is a lot smaller, and the sump is deeper into it. So when you look at the WRX pan, already has and those pans already have a oil control issue, or that motor, I should say. You figure how much of the sump is actually submerged when there's only, say, a quart of oil in the bottom of the pan. A long time ago, the way it was kind of presented to me, and I'm not sure that this is a guarantee by any means, but somebody once told me that at Redline, most motors at Redline, you need a quart of oil for every cylinder that you have. So in like a regular Subaru, those things are holding about 5 quarts in an STI pan. And if you think about 4 cylinders revving at Redline, you need at least 4 quarts. You got 5. Sounds pretty good. But then you start getting that slosh up the sides of the pan and up into the heads, or oil not able to return effectively under high coring loads. Well, then now you've cut that down substantially. And so if you think about having a quart or so in your pan with a small footprint, the pickup's quite a bit more submerged, so it's not sucking air. And then you look at the WRX pan, which is a much larger footprint, which is also less capacity, and you can see that there's potential to suck air there. Well, you take that same idea, that same thought process, and you look at this oil pan that, say, Toke Factory made, which I'm assuming it's really similar to what Speed Academy made, and you've got this really big footprint on it. I just don't see like any amount of trapdoors, any amount of baffling or whatever is going to change the shape of the footprint under cornering loads. Sure, it might close the door off to prevent sloshage and whatever, but ultimately what it comes down to is if you've got a pan of a rather large footprint, you get down to that last, say, quart or two, that last quart and a half or whatever, how much of your sump is actually submerged. I'm not the only person who's ever thought of that. On the old Orca Viper cars, and even on the current, I guess over in Europe, they race the GT86s, which are obviously a boxer platform. Both of those run a wet sump, and both of those have oil pickups. We'll call them G activated to make them sound funny, but ultimately they swivel. So when you turn right, the oil sump books left, and that's where the oil slosh in. So the oil sump is kind of migrating, at least with the oil. Like I said, you can kind of trap it however you want, but it's still not going to change that footprint. But at least the sump is kind of following the sloshes of the oil. And those two cars, you know, obviously something from the mid to late 90s and something more recent, that migrating oil sump, I mean, if you're gonna do a wet sump on something that's got a footprint as big as, say, what Toke Factory's trying to use, and what I'm assuming that they're building for the Speed Academy car, you really do, I mean, that's something that you could do to try and help. Take that same idea, well, not necessarily that same idea, but you look at the concept, like what I'm talking about, with the footprint size being as the surface area of it being as big as it is. Well, Toke Factory took their car out to do some testing. Beautiful car, by the way, and I'm in no way talking shit about Toke Factory. But they took their car out to do some shakedown passes, and I think they were at like a moderate horsepower level. I think ultimately this thing's built for, say, 700 wheel. I think they're out at wastegate pressure, say, a 400 wheel horsepower. Well, about 3 laps in, the standalone shuts the engine down because of low oil pressure. And this thing's, you know, cornering in these cornering loads. It's not even I guess the truck that they're at's not super high speed. It was on the Hoonigans channel that they kind of got to see the car out there doing testing, and that was like 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, and I haven't seen any other developments. But in my opinion, that footprint is just too big. It's just too big unless you're gonna run more, like over oil it. I mean, you can run an AccuSump, but I'm personally not a fan of the AccuSump. The way I see the AccuSump, it's one of those scenarios where, kind of like the dry sump, or not the dry sump, the standalone. If your AccuSump's going off, you're using the AccuSump, you need to be alerted. And I think they have lights and stuff that tell you that you're being used it. But it's one of those things that saves your motor. It's not a method that anyone should be using to supplement their oil system so they can do lap after lap after lap. It's one of those moments, it's like the standalone that shuts the car off. It's about preservation. That thing should go off and you should immediately pull out of it, immediately pull out of the car. And if you have a sump that's got a big surface area, that's a lot of oil that, I mean, sure, it can hold a lot of oil, but these aren't tall sumps, these tall butterflies that they're using. So these things, got oil pressure problems. So ultimately, I guess what I'm seeing is K20s, K-series motors are awesome in all these different power plants. But I can see in the 240 and possibly in the 350Z, because they did cut some of the pan out to fit the cross member on that 350Z that they did for the Build Battle. But really, a tri-sump would absolutely be the way to go on a K-series motor. Those motors are already tall in the first place. You get those motors down, and I know it's expensive in a sense, Speed Academy picked their K24 up for like $500 or $600, but they got thousands of dollars invested in just the whole swap and hours of time. What's a $3,000 to $5,000 dry sump kit when you're setting this thing up? You have hardly any oil pan. You can lower the engine even more, and it's already a tall engine. You don't have to worry about spacing the subframe down. That's one of the methods that Speed Academy used to try and fit the motor in there. So that's like one of those things you don't have to worry about. I'm just going to bring it closer to me. That thing's losing it. And then, dry sump on it. You can lower the engine. You can get the center of gravity really nice and low. And it's really, I think, and I hope my buddy Kieran is hearing this, that's really the route you should go. Don't have to worry about messing with your suspension geometry. You can get those drive lines, or maybe make a small sacrifice in the suspension geometry for a big gain on your driveline angles. I mean, a lot of cool stuff. Definitely think that the CD009 is a sweet transmission, but I 100% believe that the BMW transmission is the way to go. It's just so compact, and a chassis mount shifter and dual DSSR, dual select shear rod, or whatever it means. I mean, that just whatever length it needs to be, and boom, you're going. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say about that, or at least off the top of my head. I'm at the old house now, but tell me what you guys think in the comments. Definitely not putting a K-swap into the Subaru. So I'm sure somebody's going to talk about that. I've already been told that like 100 million times. And for me, the biggest reason I don't want to do that is one that's, it just doesn't, the cars already have so much weight in front of basically your axle center line that it's just not worth it to me to make that sacrifice. There's another way. There's got to be another way. So that being said, not doing that, not doing that at all, or not that I can even think of in the near future. But yeah, I mean, the other K-swap cars, I think they're great. I think they're an awesome platform. And hell, they'll make 300 horsepower normally aspirated. So either way, something to think about. Think about that oil thing. I mean, just think about, that the larger your surface area is of your footprint of your pan, the more oil it actually takes. A quart of oil is going to drop down quite a bit lower. And then you add high cornering loads into a track car. Maybe sure on a street car, that might be something you can get away with. But on a track car, there's just no way you could get away with that. So anyway, like, subscribe. I'll post a couple of links down for some of those videos I was just talking about. And if you guys want to watch those, check them out. See what I'm talking about. Either way, I will see you tomorrow.